In 2022, a 78-year-old retired schoolteacher named Elisabetta Franzoni became the first person to live for more than 4 years powered entirely by a machine no larger than a grapefruit. When she died, her heart was still working perfectly. The doctors who removed it described it as flawless. Not worn, not degraded. Functionally identical to the day it was implanted. The device that kept her alive outlasted her. That sentence should stop you cold, because everything we assumed about mechanical hearts, that they were temporary bridges, stopgaps, things that bought time, turns out to have been wrong. Right now, roughly 6.2 million Americans are living with heart failure. Every year, approximately 3,500 of them receive a donor heart transplant. That sounds like a reasonable number until you learn that over 100,000 people are actively waiting. The gap between supply and demand is not shrinking. It is widening. Since 2018, the number of people diagnosed with end-stage heart failure has grown by 23%, driven by an aging population, rising rates of hypertension, and the lingering cardiovascular effects of COVID-19 infection. Donor hearts, by contrast, have not grown proportionally. They never will. A donor heart must be transplanted within 6 hours of harvest. It requires perfect tissue matching to avoid rejection. And even a successful transplant comes with a lifetime of immunosuppressant drugs that slowly destroy the kidneys and leave patients vulnerable to infections most healthy people would shrug off. The artificial heart is not a fallback. For tens of millions of people alive today, it is the only realistic path forward. The story of mechanical hearts goes back further than most people expect. In 1969, surgeon Denton Cooley implanted the first total artificial heart in a human patient at the Texas Heart Institute in Houston. The device kept the patient alive for 64 hours. It was enormous, bulky, and driven by external pneumatic pressure, essentially a pump operated by compressed air tubes running out of the chest wall. The patient survived long enough to receive a donor transplant, then died of pneumonia 3 days later. For the next 3 decades, the artificial heart remained what it had always been, a desperate measure. Early models like the Jarvik 7, used in the 1980s, tethered patients to refrigerator-sized external machines. Robert Jarvik's device kept William DeVries' patient Barney Clark alive for 112 days in 1982. Think of those early devices the way you think of the first mobile phones, technically functional, but so constrained by their hardware that their practical use was nearly zero. The engineering problem was never biological understanding. It was material science, miniaturization, and one specific mechanical flaw that engineers spent 40 years trying to solve. That flaw is something called contact fatigue, and understanding it changes how you see everything that came after. Every mechanical pump that moves blood uses a rotating component, an impeller, a turbine, something spinning fast enough to create flow. In early devices, that rotor made physical contact with its housing. Bearings touched surfaces. Surfaces wore down. At the flow rate required to sustain a human life, roughly 5 liters per minute, beating the equivalent of 100,000 times a day. Contact between moving parts creates microscopic debris. That debris enters the bloodstream. It causes clotting. It causes stroke. The longest any bearing-based artificial heart kept a patient alive before catastrophic mechanical failure was under 2 years. The engineers at Carmot, the French biomedical company founded in 2008 by cardiac surgeon Alain Carpentier, identified this as the central problem early. Their solution was not to build a better bearing. It was to eliminate contact entirely. What they developed instead belongs to a category of engineering so elegant it feels almost like it shouldn't work. Carmot's Aeson heart, approved by the European Commission in 2020, uses magnetically suspended rotors. The spinning component floats inside a magnetic field with zero physical contact with any housing wall. This is called magnetic levitation, and in the context of a heart implant, its implications are staggering. There is no friction. There is no wear surface. There is no mechanical degradation over time. In bench testing, Carmot's pumping mechanism ran continuously for the equivalent of 15 years without measurable decline in performance. To put that in scale, a donor heart transplant has a median survival of 12.5 years. The mechanical heart that replaced it, in lab conditions, outperforms that lifespan by 20% before showing any sign of stress. The Aeson device also does something no previous artificial heart could do. It adapts in real time. Embedded sensors monitor blood flow resistance and automatically adjust pump speed within milliseconds. When you stand up from a chair, your heart rate increases. The Aeson does the same thing, not because it was told to, but because its algorithms detect the pressure change and respond. 200 patients had been implanted with Aeson devices as of early 2026. Survival rates at 180 days now exceed 75%. That number is rising every year. Here is how the Aeson actually works, step by step, because the mechanism is genuinely worth understanding. The device consists of 2 chambers, one for each ventricle of a natural heart. Each chamber is divided by a flexible membrane made from a material derived from bovine pericardium, that is, tissue harvested from cow heart sacs, treated to prevent biological rejection. On one side of that membrane is blood. On the other side is hydraulic fluid. The magnetic rotor pumps the hydraulic fluid back and forth, flexing the membrane, which in turn pushes the blood forward without the blood ever touching a spinning part. Think of it like a bellows, where the air side never contacts the fire side. The blood and the mechanism are completely isolated from each other. This is why clotting risk drops so dramatically compared to earlier devices. The sensors embedded in the membrane walls measure pressure differential 1,000 times per second and feed that data to a microprocessor the size of a thumbnail. That processor adjusts hydraulic fluid flow rate dynamically, mimicking the variable output of a biological heart. The patient carries a lithium battery pack worn as a vest. It weighs 1.8 kilograms. Battery life is currently 4 hours per charge, with wireless charging under active development. That battery constraint is the current ceiling. That battery issue is not a minor footnote. 4 hours of untethered operation means the patient is, in a real sense, never fully free. They cannot sleep without a charging connection. They cannot swim. They cannot be more than a few minutes from a power source. One patient in the French clinical trial died not from device failure, but from a power interruption caused by a faulty cable connector. A death that had nothing to do with the heart itself and everything to do with its external dependencies. The second complication is cost. A single Aeson implantation, including surgery, hospitalization, and the device itself, currently runs approximately 180,000 euros in France, where it is partially reimbursed by the national health system. In the United States, where FDA approval is still pending as of 2026, patients have no access through standard insurance. The third issue is sizing. The current Aeson model fits approximately 86% of adult men, but only 61% of adult women and virtually no pediatric patients. A smaller version is in development. It is not yet ready. Here is what this means for you specifically. If you are between 40 and 65, you are going to make a medical decision in your lifetime that did not exist as a realistic option for the previous generation. End-stage heart failure is not a death sentence in the way it was in 2010. Within the next decade, cardiologists predict that total artificial hearts will be prescribed not only as last resorts, but as planned replacements for hearts damaged beyond repair by heart attacks, viral cardiomyopathy, or genetic disease. The FDA's anticipated approval window for the Aeson in the United States is 2027 to 2028, based on current trial timelines. If you have a family history of heart disease, that timeline is personally relevant to you. Insurance frameworks are already being renegotiated. UnitedHealth and Cigna have both opened exploratory coverage discussions with Carmot. The cardiologist you see in 5 years will have options your current doctor simply does not have. The question that surgeons keep returning to is one that sounds philosophical, but is entirely practical. If the device outlasts the body, what does that tell us about where the ceiling actually is? Alain Carpentier said in a 2023 interview that the goal was never to replicate the human heart. It was to surpass it. A biological heart is a marvel, but it is not designed for longevity. It is designed for reproduction